In my view, anyone that's got partner or brings children into the world should have some form of life insurance. The strange thing I love about my job, right, and the way that I do business is I very rarely do business with people who are looking for me, right? I have conversations with people and I can almost see the change in their face and the tone of their voice when I make them realize the need for having a will, the need for life insurance, the need for critical illness cover.
Hey everyone, this is Moses Bright. Welcome to another lovely episode. Now today is an amazing day and I've got a very good guest with me. I mean, when you want to learn about protecting yourself, protecting your loved ones, protecting your assets, this is the guy to speak to. And I'm joined by no other person but Jason. Jason, how are you, my man? How's it going?
I'm absolutely fabulous.
Hey, come on. Fabulous. I love that.
Thank you for inviting me here. I really appreciate it. It's nice to see you again.
It's about time. Jason, first of all, I want to say thank you for coming to join us today. So what we're going to be talking about today is very, very close to my heart. And you know that. But before I start, Jason, I want you to just share. Tell us, who is Jason? Tell us more about yourself and what you do.
So I wear two hats. So one hat is I'm a insurance advisor. So I do life insurance, critical illness cover, income protection, and private medical insurance. And on the other hat, I do wills, lasting powers of attorneys, and trust planning. So when you combine those two things together, it's really looking at overall legacy planning for clients.
I like the word you just said right there. Legacy planning, because that's not really something that most people, or should I say some people, think about. I mean, you've been doing this for how long now?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
And so how have you found it? So in the last 10 years, would you say that, have you noticed a lot of people wanting to know more about legacy planning?
Well, there's been quite a big shift, I would say, because especially in the last, say, 7 years, I've concentrated more on property clients. So in the early days, I made this automatic assumption that people that had large property portfolios already had this stuff sorted. They had their life assurance, they had their wills and stuff done. And then I did a show called The Landlord and Investment Show. And as I interviewed people and asked people the question, they would say to me, no, I haven't got that done. It's on my list. And I just found that most people just didn't get around to it because they see property investment as a means of an income and providing financial freedom, but they don't think about the what ifs. If I leave the planet, where does this portfolio go? What is the legacy behind this portfolio that I'm putting together?
Yeah. So, Jason, we met a long time ago. I mean, we're talking about a decade now, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've been going there for and we've had some amazing conversations. And I remember the first time I met you and you asked me what I was doing. This was, 10 years ago? Yeah, about 10 years ago. And I said, I was a property consultant, helping people to, purchase property, build a portfolio. And that was where the conversation kicked off. But I also like the fact that you asked me about my own, protection, like my own, life insurance. And I believe I was in my probably mid-20s or something like that. Then and you said, and you were quite surprised that I had life insurance. Why was that? Do you think? Because we're talking about you helping people in property, people who've got a portfolio to protect their asset. But do you also think there's also a need for the younger generation to know more about life insurance and why is it important that they know more about it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Moses. I think, in my view, anyone that's got partner or brings children into the world should have some form of life insurance. Because if you if something happened to you and you dropped off those children to your aunt, brother, sister, whoever's going to be looking after them for the next 10, 15, 18 years, yeah, how would they do that? First of all, who would those people be that would be selected to look after your children? And then how would they afford it? So if you've got a brother, for example, who has two kids, a 3-bedroom house, one child's got one room, the other child's got another room, and then they have their own room. If your two children were dropped off there, where would they sleep? You know,
Yeah.
the family might have to move and relocate somewhere else to look after your kids. So having life insurance in place when you've got kids is really important, because you want to make sure that somebody's got money to be able to look after them, but also you might want to give them a little head start in life. That could be university fees, that could be investing in property, starting their own business, whatever it may be.
Okay, but Jason, what about those people who don't have kids? So when we met, I didn't have kids, so I was planning. Well, I think I was married. I think, but no kids. But I already had life insurance, and then you spoke to me about, have you reviewed your life insurance? And I thought, okay, bro, I got this, I got life insurance. What do you mean review? I didn't even know what it meant to even review life insurance. And then you started to educate me about, make sure you've got the right policy. Because sometimes you just see people say, well, just take out life insurance. You can take out life insurance for £10, 15 quid. But then you went into more details with me. So for those people who don't have kids, or even those who don't have a partner, is it still important for them to take out life insurance?
Not really, in all honesty, because life insurance is not really for you. It's for somebody else. I would say that I had one client who I went to see, and she had a son. And she said to me, Jason, you got to do life insurance for my son, right? And I was quite surprised. I was like, why do you need that in place? And she said, look, if anything happens to him, I haven't got the money to bury him, right? You know, in our community, what does the average funeral cost nowadays? Anywhere from 10 to 15 grand, right? And she said, I haven't got the money to be able to do that. So she said, he's working, he's got himself a little job, and I did him a policy for £15 a month. That was about 6 years ago, and he still has that policy. So when you're single, you don't necessarily need life insurance, but if anything happens to you, somebody's got to pay for the funeral expenses. So where does that money come from? It might come from life insurance. To this day, you're one of the few people, young people I've ever met who's had life insurance from a young age. Okay, it's not something that most young people think about, even if they do have children, etc. My average client is probably 40 plus in age. Yeah.
40 plus.
Mm-hmm.
And when we met and we started talking about life insurance, I was in my 20s.
Yeah, and you already had it.
And I already had it.
Yeah.
So do you think this is because of a lack of awareness, education, or is it to do with culture? Because, I'll be honest with you. I'm from a African background. Now, I didn't know about life insurance until my early 20s. I'll probably say, I think I was about 23, 24. And the only reason I decided to know more about it was because I remember I knew someone who lost their parent. And I started asking questions like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen with the house and things like that? And they didn't have life insurance. There was no life insurance, and I knew it wasn't a great experience. So I then looked back. So when I was learning about it, I then realized that I lost my father when I was about 7 years old. That's long, talking about 30 years ago, and there was no life insurance. So there was nothing, because when I was learning about it, I realized, with life insurance, they could have a will, they can have things, they get paid out. So I'm thinking, is this because we are not looking to find out more about how we could protect our loved ones, or we just think? I mean, what's the reason why you think our community don't really know more about life insurance from your experience?
I think the younger generation kind of all think they're invincible. So, they're going about their lives, they're working, they're enjoying themselves. So no one's really thinking about the what ifs at that point. And I think the older you get, you start to think about different things. You see different people pass, you hear different stories, and therefore you understand the importance of having something in place. One of the things I love about life insurance is that it's like, when you MOT your car, right?
Yeah.
The MOT is on the day that they do the test, right? Whatever's wrong with your car the day after, you've got that MOT for 12 months.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct. Yeah.
So with life insurance, it's almost similar. The day that you write the policy is the day of that MOT test. No matter what happens to your health after that, you've got that policy in place.
Yeah.
So imagine if you were in your mid-20s and you did a policy for 40 years. You said, right, I'm going to pay whatever pounds a month, or you wrote the policy to age 90, for example.
Yeah.
Any health conditions, any health problems that come along after that, you've secured a rate when you were in your mid-20s. So that's one of the things that I really love about having life insurance. Generally speaking, in our industry, we have something called a reasons why letter, right?
Okay.
Which says, why did this person take out this insurance? What was the need for them, right? So the industry doesn't really consider that single people who don't have a partner or don't have kids or don't have a mortgage should have life insurance. Yeah. But definitely if you have debts, if you have a partner, if you have kids, then life insurance becomes extremely relevant. And as I said, you can write that policy for a longer term than what you need, because you might say, I want to cover my kids until they're of age 20, for example. Or you might say, I want to cover my partner to have a lump sum of money for next 30 years, 40 years. So you as the customer can decide how long you need that cover for.
Yeah. And that just took me back as well. So I remember when we started speaking years ago and you asked me the question about life insurance, and I said I had it. And I remember you asked me, you probably don't remember what you asked me. So it's funny enough you said it now. You actually asked me, why did you take life insurance? And I thought, why is a protection advisor asking me why I took, obviously because I didn't have kids, I wasn't married, there was no mortgage back then. But you said to me, so Moses, why did you take life insurance? But I was in a relationship. I was, I think a few months later, so I got married or something like that. Or I think I'm thinking I might be getting it wrong, but it was either I was married or I was just in the process of getting married. But all I remember I saying to you was, when I found out that she was my wife and we were getting married, I literally took out life insurance to protect the woman that I was getting married to. And when I told you about the amount, you were like, how did you get to think about it? Because I said, well, we're going to be married. I was thinking we were going to get married in a few months' time. I took it out. Fantastic. And should anything happen to me, she's covered. And one reason why I did that was because around that time, there was a young person that I knew that passed away. And there was no life insurance. They didn't have life insurance or funeral cover, which we're going to talk about very soon. Mm-hmm. And just to see how it was difficult for the family, like the parents.
Yeah.
That for me was like, I don't want people to go through that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that was when I knew that, boy, funeral is expensive. The coffin I was like, what? This casket, how much? They were like, yeah, this is the price. I didn't think, and they were even saying some of the flowers, the flowers are quite expensive. Like there's a cost to it, but it's something that a lot of people don't think about. Because one thing is certain, I know we don't like to talk about it, but everyone one day, actually, well, there's a birthday and there's a death day.
And there's an end day.
There's an end day. Now, we all get excited when a baby's born, and I've got kids, you've got kids, you know. But when it comes to that death day, the birthday is full of joy, celebration, laughter, like, oh my God, so cute. The death day, it's sad because people are losing their loved ones. And when I saw what the family was going through because this young person didn't have life insurance or any funeral cover, and then that's when I knew more about the GoFundMe page where they're raising money to bury this person to cover costs. There were debts because obviously young people do have debt as well, so there was things to pay off, and that really got me thinking. Like, I'm getting married, okay? Then I got married. Why would I want to then? Should I pass away? Why would I want my spouse to go through that pain?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I want to ask you as well. Tell us more about the funeral planning. I think this will probably help some of the older generation, because again, sometimes in the African community, some of them don't have funeral plans, and from what I know, and I've spoken to some of my friends, when they notice that their parents be older and they start asking them, what have you put in place? Boy, the response is not quite nice.
Yeah, they think you're trying to kill them off.
Yeah, you're trying to end me. Yeah, so they always thinking like, why are you talking to me about this? Like, I'm not gonna, like, why are you bringing this up now? And they're always trying to like fob it off. How important it is for people to have, have that in place.
I think we shouldn't leave it to the responsibility of our children, right? So I think that it's something that we should take care of ourselves. Unfortunately, I've arranged a few funerals, right? And I think one of them was circa £15,000, right?
For funeral.
So headstone, plot, flowers, funeral home.
Was it because of that was their wish?
Of
was
life.
that what they wanted?
It's an average cost.
So you're saying that the average cost of most funerals in the UK is about 15 grand?
Could be up to 15 grand, yeah. In the West Indian community, for definite. Yeah.
Is that because obviously it's also a celebration of life as well?
Yeah.
But now if they don't have that in place, how difficult it is? Do you also think that people are probably taking out debt, take credit card loans?
Well, that's
to
the
fund
thing,
it?
isn't it? Where does the 15 grand come from, right?
Or they just cremate the person?
And even that still costs a lot of money still. But the problem is that sometimes you have to borrow money from family members, right? And I've seen many times where those family members have come forward, given money for funeral, but how are they going to get it back? They don't get it back. Yeah. So, and people fall out over it. So I think it's important for anyone to think, yeah, I need to sort this out myself. I don't want to leave the burden upon my children to find that money. So yeah, we've got to sort it out.
But do you still come across resistance when you're talking to people about that, about funeral planning? Do you think, obviously because of what you do, are people more open to you, to getting it done?
The strange thing I love about my job, right, and the way that I do business is I very rarely do business with people who are looking for me, right? And I'll explain what that means, right? I have conversations with people and I can almost see the change in their face and the tone of their voice when I make them realize the need for having a will, the need for life insurance, the need for critical illness cover. And because you've given them the idea and the concept, 9 times out of 10, they're going to do it with you anyway, because you were the one that gave them the light bulb moment, as opposed to someone searching around saying, oh, I really need to do funeral planning, or I need to do life insurance, whatever it may be. So I quite enjoy that aspect because I'm the one that was able to help them and realize how important it was.
Okay. So Jason, for for our viewers who are watching or listening, can you break down the difference between life insurance, critical illness, funeral cover, will, and will in the trust? I know there's a lot.
That's a big question. That's a big question. Okay, let's go.
So I know I'm putting you in the spot there, but can you break it down so people understand? This is life insurance. This is critical illness cover. This is funeral cover. This is a will, and this is a will in a trust. Because if people have the knowledge about these things, maybe they can probably want to go and find out more and see how they can probably implement it and protect their loved ones.
Yeah. So life assurance is a lump sum of money, right? So that lump sum of money can be used for whatever you want to use it for. Some people will use it for tax planning, paying off mortgages, paying off debt, legacy planning. You might just want to give a lump sum to children, family, whoever.
Cats, dogs, I've heard about that.
Whoever it may be, right? So at the end of the day, it's a lump sum of money, right? Now, if you look at funeral planning, it could be the same thing. So you could get that same amount of money that you need for the funeral from that life insurance, right? But here's the slight problem with that. Most people that do a life insurance policy will do what we call a term policy. So therefore, it lasts for a certain period of time and ends at a certain period of time. So there is a possibility that you could be paying for your insurance policy. It could come to an end and then you got no cover.
And you're still alive.
And you're still alive. So then we've got a problem, right? So many of my clients now are saying, okay, if I need to have a guaranteed amount of money to pay for a funeral, no matter when I go, I could be 90, I could be 100, whatever, right? Then a funeral plan is often a great idea because it's a guaranteed lump sum of money no matter when.
So is that linked to the life insurance or is that separate from the life insurance?
It's separate. So many clients will go for something like, they call it an over 50s plan. So you put that policy in place. It might be, for example, 10,000, 20,000, whatever it may be. You pay your premiums, and then that money is guaranteed to pay when the person dies. It can go straight to the funeral home. Okay. So instead of it going into the family's household account, etc., it goes straight to the funeral home. And if there's anything left over after the funeral costs, that can be paid out to the family. So
but I'm guessing the funeral home will obviously contact the family to make sure they're not just over, you know what I mean? Obviously make sure the numbers work.
They'll invoice all the bills and whatever.
Just to make sure.
So let's give an example. Let's say there was £10,000 paid over, right? The funeral home's cost could be anywhere from as little as £1,500 to £4,500, right? But then you've got flowers, you've got headstone, you've got plot, so you've got other disbursement costs. You've even got to pay for the priest. So so there's a lot of additional costs, right?
Priest and free. Oh, wow.
So let's say if there's like £500 left over after all of that, then they would pay that £500 to the family after the cost. But it means that you're not scrambling around to find the cost to pay for the funeral home. You haven't got to do the GoFundMes. You haven't got to do any sort of payment plan for your funeral. It's done. You know that you haven't given the burden to the family, to the kids, and it's one of those boxes that you've ticked.
Okay. So you've explained the life insurance, which is a lump sum of money that you get.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is when someone passes away, and that money can go to whoever I guess that's the beneficiary. Is that correct? And then you've got the funeral plan, which is, again, is a lump sum of money to cover the cost of the funeral. Now, you also have the critical illness cover. Can you tell us more about that, please?
I'm a big fan of critical illness cover.
Yeah, I know you are. You always mention that, yeah.
Critical illness cover is a lump sum paid on diagnosis of a critical illness. Okay. The top critical illnesses are heart attack, cancer, stroke, multiple sclerosis, and brain tumours. So if you imagine, if you're diagnosed with one of those things, let's take the top one, which is cancer, you're in for a difficult 12 months to 2 years. You're going to go through chemotherapy, radiotherapy. Um, some clients are going to have depression afterwards. So you might not be able to work for a period of time. A critical illness policy will pay out a lump sum to you in your account, tax-free, for you to do whatever you want to do with that money. So some clients might use it towards paying off some of their bills to ease their monthly costs. You might use alternative treatment.
Okay.
I had one client, she went to Mexico for alternative therapy.
Okay.
Yeah, a company called Oasis of Hope. Yeah, they do like vitamin C treatment, right? And that treatment helps you to get through the chemo, the radiotherapy and stuff easier.
Okay.
But it's 10, 15, 20 grand.
For that.
Yeah. So where does that money come from? Yeah.
Especially if the client's not working.
Even if they are working, if you think about how hard it is to save some money, right? You might have 20, 30 grand in the bank and you've taken you 10 years to save that money. And then all of a sudden, cancer comes along. For you to make a decision to spend 20 grand of that money for you to get through this cancer on alternative therapy, it's a big spend, right?
Yeah.
So a critical illness policy could pay out whatever lump sum that you've decided to choose, and you could use that instead.
Okay.
So you've still got your own money in your bank as your rainbow money, yeah, in case it rains. But you can use a critical illness policy money. So that lump sum is really flexible. It's really there to do whatever you need it to do for that period. Some people might only have their employer paying them for, some people are self-employed, right?
Yeah.
So they might have no income coming in at all. Yeah. Some people are employed and might have a salary coming in from their employer for anywhere from 3 months to 12 months. But just paying your salary might not be enough to get through an uncomfortable time through the next 12, 24 months. So critical illness cover will pay out on diagnosis. So you don't have to be diagnosed to die or anything like that. As long as you survive for 14 days, that lump sum is yours to do with whatever you want to do with it.
So the person has to wait 14 days after they've been diagnosed before they get paid out.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and with a critical illness, you can choose the amount you want.
Yeah. Depending upon your budget.
Yeah.
I think my lowest client has £10,000 worth.
Okay.
I think my highest client has £1 million.
Well, £1 million.
Yeah.
So they've got life insurance.
Uh-huh.
And they've got critical illness. That must be a high premium.
It's a very high premium.
I can imagine.
£800 a month.
Come on. Wow. But it, I mean, I know we laugh about it, but it just also shows you how there are people out there who take these things so serious.
Yeah.
Because it's, I mean, we don't wish sickness on any of us or anyone that we know. But when someone gets ill, that just going through that period of, diagnosis and just going through treatment and things like that, it's not a good thing.
No.
It's not a good thing. And I can imagine people out there who don't have any cover, the toll on the family, and you can imagine their mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the last thing you want, right, is to be worrying about bailiffs coming to your door.
Yeah.
Right? And not being able to keep the light on, keep the heating in the house, paying your credit card, paying your mortgage, all these things.
And even, we're going to go into that, and even rent.
Yeah.
Because obviously, sometimes people think, I don't own a mortgage. So that's what I'm saying. Because sometimes people think these things don't really apply to them because, listen, I'm renting. So why do I need life insurance?
I'll tell you why. That's a great one that you've just mentioned, right? So some years back, I went to the National Landlords Association meeting. There was a networking meeting in London. And there was obviously a room full of landlords. And one person told a story about their tenant being diagnosed with cancer. And they lost their job because they couldn't work, right? They didn't have no income coming in. So the conversation was all based around, what do they do? Because she couldn't afford to pay her rent, right? You as a landlord, what do you do now?
How do you approach it?
Are you going to chuck someone out on the street that's been diagnosed with cancer? So for a year, this landlord didn't get no rent.
But they had a mortgage to pay.
Yeah, they've still got the mortgage to pay. Now imagine if that tenant had a small critical illness policy that paid out even £20,000. Then they could go, you know what? I'm not going to be working for the next whatever. I don't know when I'm going to get back to work. Here's 6 months rent up front. Here's a year's rent up front. So you know that the most important thing, somewhere to live, is covered.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you've got expenses, if you've got bills, which most of us have, critical illness cover is really important.
So, you just make me think now. There's a lot in the real estate industry that we don't really talk about, Jason, because I think sometimes we just focus on either you're renting or as a property entrepreneur myself and consultant, you want to help people buy their homes, get investment properties, but we don't really. I don't see or hear much people talking about the tenants, because there's this thing. Landlords are evil, landlords are this and that and that. But what you've just said right now is important, that I'm also a landlord myself, but letting agents or managing agent don't really talk about, the protection of the tenant. What the government is actually focusing on now is that the property, they're trying to bring policy, the rental reforms bill, let's protect tenants from shoddy landlords. But what about the tenant themselves?
Yeah.
Are they actually putting things in place for themselves? Because I took out life insurance when I was renting. That's when I took it out. And thinking about it now, what would have been paid out, and I also took a critical illness cover because I was working, because I got a bit of knowledge that, okay, because I thought I was like, I don't need it. I'm young. I'm a young guy. I don't need it, because that's what we think about, isn't it? Well, I'm young. Why do I need?
That's right.
Critical illness cover? And I mean, the first person I spoke to said, so if you had an accident and you hurt your leg and you couldn't walk and you couldn't go to work, what happens? Have you got a phone bill? I was like, yeah, I've got a phone bill. Have you got this? Have you got credit cards? Like, yeah, have you got this? So how would you pay for it? And I just thought, I paused and I thought, oh yeah, how long would they continue paying me a salary for not going to work? And that was when it just dawned on me, and I thought, okay, you know what, yeah, can I have I think it was about 30 or 50K or whatever. I just thought, listen, because I was young then, it was cheaper to do it then. So now we've spoken about the critical illness cover. Let's jump into the wills, because this is a big one, Jason. You know this already. And,
Absolutely.
I'm also big on this. It's the wills and stuff. So tell us, let us also, for our listeners, what's a will and what's the difference between a normal will and also a will in a trust?
So once again, I think wills are really important. If you've brought children into the world, then you should have a will, because within your will, you can state who you would want to look after your children. Yeah. If anything happened to you, that's really important, because if you don't decide who that person is, then the government's going to decide who that person is.
Can you elaborate on that? Because sometimes we hear this thing that the government will decide, but you're thinking, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate on that?
If you die without a will, that's called dying intestate. So the government has a flow chart of, if you're married or if you're single, if you've got kids, if you've got parents alive, of what will happen to your assets if you haven't decided and done a will. So depending upon where you are, it means that your stuff could go to your brother, for example. I mean, so many people who don't get on with their siblings and they haven't done a will, and if anything happens to them, half of their money goes to their siblings. And they didn't know.
Because they're not here.
Yeah, they didn't know, right? So doing a will is the only way really that you can decide and take control over where your assets are going to go. Yeah. And also, as I said, who would be the person or people to look after your children? You know, you could have two siblings, for example. You could have one that is the children's favorite auntie, uncle. Yeah. But they might be broke. So if you dropped off your children to their house, yeah, and there's no money to help look after those kids, right? Would they be the right people to look after your children for the next 10, 15 years? You could have another sibling. Yeah, okay. They might not be as close to the children, but that one's financially a bit more secure. They got a good job. They got a good house. They might only have one child instead of three children, whatever it may be. And I think that this person could provide a much more comfortable financial stability
Yeah.
for my kids. So which one do you choose? So if you don't choose, right, then the government's going to make that choice for you.
And they can choose whoever they.
They can choose whoever they see fit, right? But you might, by doing a will, you can say, actually, I'm going to choose this person, and for your own reasons, this is why you've chosen that person. And they could have assistance from somebody else, from another family member to help raise them, but you want to decide where they actually go.
Okay. And so tell us about the trust.
So trusts are, it's an interesting subject. Lots of people get excited about trusts. But I was on Clubhouse this morning. Let's give you an example, right? And there's a very good friend of mine who's a client as well. And she had a situation whereby her mum passed away, right? Leaving her dad. And the dad got lonely and decided that he wanted to get married to somebody else, right? This is what we called sideways disinheritance, right? So while the mum was alive, her hope would have been that the home is passed down to the children, right? But on her dying, the home is passed to the husband. There's no trust, any form of trust in place, right? He got remarried, so now the home is now a marital asset, right? The new wife wanted to go and live abroad, so he wanted to sell that home and buy property abroad. So all of a sudden, there's no inheritance. Now, if mum had done some form of trust that allowed dad to live in the home for however long he wanted to live in the home, but within that trust, she secured 50% of the value of the property for the children, yeah, then no matter what happened, that 50% would have been secured for the kids. So a trust can do something like that, yeah. A trust can protect assets when you pass away, and that could help towards maybe keeping money outside for against inheritance tax, or you might want to protect your children when they get your assets. So they say that 50% of marriages is going to go down the toilet these days, right? So if you got two kids, right, the chances are that one of those relationships, if they get married, ain't going to work. If you pass down, let's say you had, I said, two kids, you give them £1 million each, yeah? Your property portfolio is sold and they get £1 million each, right? If that money goes directly into their bank accounts, right, that now becomes marital money. If that relationship or one of those relationships is not going so well, then in that marital money, as Eddie Murphy says, half is gone.
Wow.
Yeah, because that money is now marital joint money. If you pass down that money to the children via a trust, I call it the magical box. The money's within the magical box. In the event of divorce or anything like that, then if that person says, yeah, you got some money, I know you got some money, your mum and dad left you £1 million, you could say, listen, it's in the magical box, got nothing to do with me. It's for the benefit of a number of different people. It's in a trust. So it doesn't become part of your marital assets. Therefore, it's protected. A trust lasts for 125 years.
So you can pass it on from one generation to another generation to another generation.
Legacy planning.
Wow. Jason, you know what, yeah? I'm just listening to you and I'm like, I've not even... There's more.
We can go on for days.
Oh, man, there's more. But definitely, I mean, there's so much more to cover. We've never even dive more into real estate planning and things like that. But I just wanted our listeners to have an understanding of something that we're both passionate about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, we have conversations and sometimes we're thinking, you know, I share things with you that I've gone through or I've just experienced with something I've heard. And you're like, wow, I've just come. I remember you used to say to me, you know, oh, Moses, you know how it was? I've just gone to a funeral. I know this person. And I'm like, did they have life insurance? And then you go quiet on the phone. You're like, no.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, so they know you, they know what you do, but still they didn't plan.
Yeah,
No planning in place.
Yeah.
So I just want to appreciate you for, you know, for coming to share with our viewers, and I'm sure people have learned today, you know, and there's going to be more conversation, you know, looking forward to bringing you back so we can have more conversations so people can learn. Because I think when I got the education myself, and the reason why I was more passionate about knowing more about life insurance and wills and, you know, and trust and things like that was because it was personal to me. So like I said, I lost my dad when I was very, very young, and I've got kids now, and I don't have anything to show to my kids to say, hey, I got this from dad, you know, so I'm going to pass it on to you. But because of that, you know, I went to seminars. Before I met you, I went years ago. I went to seminars. I was reading online, and then I started speaking to wealthy people, like some of the millionaires that I knew back then. And I started asking them questions, and then they were like, "Yeah, they've got life insurance and things like that." And that was how I got myself educated. Mm-hmm. So I think it is nice that people know about this, and I mean that's something you specialize in. But one thing about you, I remember the first time you spoke to me, you were so passionate.
Always.
And the passion that you had 10 years ago, it's like, it's still there.
Yeah.
It's still there. So Jason, tell us then, what is something that you love doing to keep yourself healthy?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
You're on the spot, Jason.
You did. I play a game called paddle.
Okay.
Which is like tennis and squash inside of a cage.
Okay.
And I've just recently started playing pickleball as well. So between those two, I play 3 or 4 times a week.
Nice.
Over 1,000 calories lost every time I play. Although I like too much eating, as you can see. Imagine what I would look like if I did.
That's nice.
So yeah, I enjoy my food, but I enjoy my games as well. So yeah, that's my passion. My downtime is fun, competitive, and fast paced.
Oh, that's good, man. At least you're keeping fit. And also, I also want to say thank you as well, because obviously you educated me as well more about life insurance and wills, and also my spouse, you know, my wife, and you know, and you one thing I really enjoyed talking to you about was how you took your time to really break it down.
Yeah.
Because you can just, for me, I think there's loads of information out there, and I always say this stuff, there's information out there, but it is important to have someone who can sit down with you.
Explain stuff to you properly.
Explain stuff with you in layman term. Mm-hmm. You know what I used to say to you? Give me those simple English. Yeah. Don't give me this big words, Jason. But you broke it down, even though I had a life cover, which I hadn't reviewed in years. You were able to explain to me that,
the different types.
Did you know?
What age it goes to.
And then you said to me,
you don't have to have it just linked to your mortgage.
Yes. And there's so much. So that's why, Jason, I think I am looking forward to bringing you back, because I'm sure that there's more things for us to talk about. But I just want to say thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And you know, it's been a great conversation. And if you have enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, you know, hit the like button, and also leave your comments. Whatever questions you have, leave it in the comments, and also hit that notification button so that next time we release an episode, you will be notified. So thank you one more time for joining us today. See you soon.